Hello and welcome to the Minds of Mountainfilm. I'm David Roberts. I'm a freelance writer. I've come to Mountainfilm often, and this time I'm serving as a film juror. My guest today is Greg Mortensen, who's known to almost everyone in America for his colossal work in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Kashmir, and for his books, 3 Cups of Tea and Stones into Schools. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks, David.
You remember Christiane was reminding me that it was 2006 when I first heard your talk here at Telluride, and I was so moved by it that I immediately went out and tried to write a profile about you, and I couldn't get my editors to go for it. And now, 4 years later, you've been profiled everywhere. But it seems that it took 3 Cups of Tea a while to catch on. Any idea? But then when it did catch on, it's got amazing staying power.
It took it came out in 2006, and one of my objections with the publisher was the subtitle was "One Man's Mission to Fight Terrorism One School at a Time," and I said I wanted to be one man's mission to fight peace, or to promote peace one school at a time. And so for a whole year it didn't do very well, but I think what really made it take off is just book clubs, women's groups, even in the military now it's required reading for all senior military commanders, liberals, conservatives, and the real message is about building relationships. The title 3 Cups of Tea means the first cup you're a stranger, second cup a friend, and the third cup you become family, but the process takes many years, and it's about the relationships that need to be involved in any kind of endeavor.
Okay. I haven't read your new book, Stones into Schools. Could you tell me and the audience what it's about and how it goes beyond 3 Cups of Tea?
Well, Stones into Schools continues 3 Cups of Tea, but what it really shows is 3 Cups of Tea also talks about a lot of my mistakes and my failures and how I learned to really empower the people rather than going with my own agenda and ideas. And the narrative arc of it takes place where in 1999 a dozen Kyrgyz horsemen came over this very remote pass from the Wakhan Corridor, Afghanistan to Pakistan, and I wasn't quite sure what they were up to, but they basically had been sent as an emissary of Commandant Abdul Rashid Khan, who's the commander there, to ask for us to help them build a school. And so it took us 10 years until last year to get that school set up, but it involves following the arc is building the relationships, and then there's the earthquake in Pakistan, and then working in Afghanistan. It took us only to move, say, 200 miles to get school built. We had to build dozens of relationships first before we could, plunk down a school in their area.
I read in the Times just a couple of days ago about poison gas attacks on girls' schools in Afghanistan, which raises the question I'm sure you've been asked often: are you endangering these girls' lives by trying to save them from, ignorance and poverty?
Well, David, there certainly is a threat. The Taliban in the last 3 years, since 2007, they bombed or burned or destroyed over 2,100 schools, and 90% of those are girls' schools. On the other hand, the number of children in school has skyrocketed in the last 10 years from 800,000 in 2000 to today, 10 years later, there's 9 million children in school, including 2.8 million females. So, and the other thing is, people, they have just a fierce tenacity and desire for education. So, the day they don't want me there, the communities will be happy to leave. But in the meantime, what they're saying is, we want peace. We don't want our babies to die, and we want our children to go to school. So, I feel really what I'm just trying to do is answer what they want most of all, and that's education.
Well, you mentioned to me just before we started rolling that there are a few nut jobs out there who are violently opposed to what you're doing. Can you
here in the
talk
U.S.
about this back? Yeah, here in the U.S. and not among people in the Near East, but people who think what you're doing is terrible.
The irony is, if you ask me what I fear the most or what is being in danger, it's unfortunate here in the U.S. since after 9/11 I started getting hate mail and threats from Americans who didn't like the fact that I was helping Muslim people out. And now after this recent book, some people are very angry that I'm helping Muslims. There's also some people who are very upset that I've been helping with the military. We don't receive any military, say any federal funding, but I do on my own help the troops understand about cultural issues and nuances, and I do that just as a voluntary basis. And I feel, whoever wants to consult with me, I'm more than happy to talk to them. But and I'm definitely not an advocate of using just firepower to solve any problem. But it's David, I guess the real enemy is for all of us is ignorance, and ignorance breeds hatred.
Well, we've all noticed how some Americans think all Muslims are the same and they're all terrorists, and you have to combat that ridiculous stereotype.
Like you've traveled a lot too, and you find that people around the world are pretty much 95% the same. We have the same hopes and fears and aspirations, but we seem to fight about all our petty differences. But we really, any kind of conflict resolution, you always first try to agree what you agree on, and then you try and solve your differences.
Yeah. Have you read John Krakauer's new book about Pat Tillman?
Oh yes.
Yeah. What do you think?
Another great Krakauer book. He did a tremendous amount of research, and he went over to Afghanistan a couple times. I've also talked to people who were involved in the military with it, so there's obviously different opinions about it. And it also highlights the fact that, I'm not sure the exact numbers, but about a third of the troops killed in Afghanistan are from friendly fire or and the misperceptions about also civilian casualties. It's a great book, I think.
I'll tell John. Has the phenomenal success of your book, 3 Cups of Tea, and the attendant celebrity been almost a hindrance for you for continuing the work?
Well, in a way, I'm really a shy guy. I'm a kind of quiet person, and it's helped with our fundraising and it's helped with outreach. But on the other hand, I realize it's for me it's very difficult to, like, you come to the festival and you're watching all these films and you don't get to go out and really meet people and hang out. And I'm a little concerned that the high profile of the book might endanger, as you mentioned earlier, the girls overseas in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and that's also the reason I received about 80 offers from Hollywood to make a film, but I'm not going to do that because I feel that a film might jeopardize the students over there, even though there could be benefit from it. So,
really, why would the film be more dangerous than the book itself?
Well, film. The people are very much into the images, and for example, Kite Runner, which is a beautiful book by Khalid Hosseini, but the film itself was filmed in Kashgar, China. Several of the actors in the film have had to leave Afghanistan because of threats on their life, and if a film was done, it would have to. What I would want is that the film could be shown entirely unedited in Pakistan, Afghanistan, without receiving any, retribution or retaliation, which would be quite challenging, I think. But I mean, it might be possible. But I think maybe doing a documentary featuring some young girl or woman who has had her life changed through education. I mean, there might be a different angle that you could do a documentary that might be more appropriate than a film, but.
Well, I suppose the other danger is that in a film you actually identify faces of real people.
Oh, real people.
That then could become targets.
They could be threatened, and in the Taliban also, it's blasphemy to have any living image of anybody. So I mean, obviously that's not our main concern, but how can you do a movie without showing somebody's face?
Do you think it's hopeless to change the mindset of the Taliban about girls in education? Do you think they're so fanatical that they can never be rationally persuaded to? Well,
the Taliban are, I think we think of them as monolithic entity, but they're actually very factionalized, and we have to deal with some of the Taliban in order to get schools established. And there's somewhat more older ideological Taliban who we can actually talk with. And then there's the younger, mostly in Pakistan, the Taliban who are, the Taliban are getting less funding from Saudi Arabia and Yemen, so they've become more criminal. They are doing more illicit lumber trafficking, heroin trafficking, kidnapping, extortion, crime. And so in many ways they become more like, just common thugs or criminals. And they're pretty much not, we can't negotiate with them, but we can talk to some of the older, especially in Afghanistan, some of the Taliban who, well, they want the same things too. They're getting kind of tired of fighting, but they also don't want the presence of foreign troops in their country.
Right.
So it's very complex, but and the older Taliban Afghanistan were more ideological. They resent the fact that there's these young Pakistani Taliban coming into their country with money and then telling them, what to do. And a lot of the, like the suicide bombers, if you identify them, often they're mentally or physically handicapped, or they've been taken out. They're maybe the 8th or 7th born son. The father he has no clue they're going to become a suicide bomber. They get paid some money, and then very quickly they indoctrinate him, they isolate him, they beat him up, they rape him, they drug him, and then within 2 months you have a person who's pretty much ready to go pull the plug. And
wow. Question I'm sure you've heard also a lot. What a colossal irony in your life that getting lost on the hike out from K2 should turn into this. Can you talk about that?
Well, I have a quote in my bathroom mirror. I've had it there about 20 years. It says, "When your heart speaks, take good notes." And I think
that's great. When your heart speaks, take good notes. Take good notes.
I think in the West, often we're very linear and logical. We're very strategic. But having worked with indigenous people in Pakistan, Afghanistan, also I grew up in Africa, and there's a more sense of the intuitive sense in your consciousness. It's also in climbing. You learn. You've got to kind of come in. Your intuition plays a big factor in climbing, not just your technical competence or your preparation, but you've got to have some intuition. And the other thing that I really, I feel very lucky. I grew up in Africa on the slopes of Kilimanjaro, and I was able to, I didn't have TV or radio, but I was able to spend a lot of time in the communities and up in the mountains. So I didn't realize it, but it was helping me prepare for what I was going to do many decades later.
Well, we're running a little short here, but to sum it up, this has become your life's work, and what do you see happening, say, in the next 10 years for you and the schools?
Well, my main goal is which is already happening to a large degree, is that I'm going to remove myself out of a lot of the process, and I guess my role is more like a cheerleader. We've completely, the community's run everything in their entirety. It's all locally run. We have committees set up, and then in the States, my goal is to set up an endowment, but also so that those schools can run indefinitely. And also, we set up a school. It's not just a school, but it's a community center. So we set up poultry farms, poplar tree plantations, women vocational centers. So the money that's generated from that helps to run the school. So I'm really trying to focus now on sustainability and viability, not just getting a school started, and also the education to make sure that they also don't forget about their indigenous ways. So we have the elders come in 2 or 3 times a week and do the storytelling and teach them about their folklore and the heritage, because that often, when a Western idea of education comes in, the community, as you know, it often really can disrupt the beautiful long-term storytelling traditions.
Well, it's a truly admirable piece of work you've done, and it's great talking to you.
Well, thanks, David. Good luck watching the rest of the films. Okay. You're the judge, right?
Yeah.
This year.
Thanks, Greg.